A few years ago, I decided to do something completely different to what I'd been doing. I had been a very modern fashion designer, and I was, frankly, fed up and burnt out with the way the fashion industry works. This is fodder for a whole different video, if not entirely different channel, but suffice to say, the industry is massively exploitative, both to the environment, garment workers, but also to designers. I switched my own career around and began working for an NGO developing assessments to help brands understand their environmental and social impacts. But coming from a career as a designer, staring at Excel sheets all day was pretty draining. Just to give a little background, most folks in the sustainability realm love pointing the finger at the Industrial Revolution as being the thing that broke fashion, and fair. Even the Paris Agreement uses the Industrial Revolution as its benchmark for climate change. So bored, antsy Jess decided to see what all the pre-industrial fuss was about, and I taught my, once again, very modern fashion designer self to make clothes using pre-industrial methods, which is weird. It's a weird thing to do, because we make clothes now so differently, but definitely worth doing because all clothing pre-industrially was essentially haute couture, bespoke, made to measure, sewn by hand, etc. And of course, I decided to share that journey with you all. Couple of problems I'd like to note here. Number one, this space, YouTube, is a tricky space to navigate creatively. YouTube tells me who you all watch before and after you watch me, so it's ripe for unhealthy comparison. Add to that influence from likes and views, and it's actually pretty difficult to follow a trajectory of self-actualization. What I end up doing is sort of making stuff one piece at a time and not really following a creative process, but rather trying to forecast what y'all will want to see based on the boiling pot that is this niche. Yeah, it's not a healthy creative process. I mean, I hate to even admit this here, but I don't like cottagecore. Never did. I am not dark academia. My aesthetic is deconstructed historicism with a dash of kitsch. So I'm not paying attention to the numbers anymore. I'm not holding myself up to other makers. From here on out, I am referencing my own creative process, which I shared in my last update video earlier this year. Okay, let's back up. I'm making a collection. I've been making a collection. I've spent the last year, well, let's just call it and say the last 5 years, exploring historicism and pre-industrial silhouette and practice, but also the pre-industrial fashion system. I've spent the last couple of months designing an entire lineup of looks using all of that exploration as my development process. So yeah, a true creative process, not just pulling an idea out of the ether. I began by pulling imagery that interested me to begin to develop the driving concept. This went through a lot of evolution, but I'm really interested in the idea of historicism as it relates to emotion. There are some ideas and silhouettes that we just can't let go of. Corsets, frock coats, 19th century shirts, so many others. A corset is objectively nice to look at, but I would argue there is something deeper that gives us satisfaction in these pieces. Whether it's that phenomenon where you feel nostalgia for a time period you didn't experience, or a desire to associate ourselves with a fantasy version of the past. Some ideas in fashion stick, while those tiered dresses we were all wearing last year are now piling up in landfill. So yeah, I began exploring what I think are some of the more emotionally durable garments from history. I have a very strong emotional response to corsets in particular. And yes, when I say corset, I am sweeping bodies, stays, jumps, whatever you want to call the structural foundational garment that is typically worn on the torso throughout history into that category. I've made a lot of these structural foundation garments on this channel and off this channel, so I have a wide array of references to pull from for design inspiration. And for this lineup, I really want to stick to inspiration from garments that I have either made or at least studied in depth in the past. I've put a lot of thought into the way humans have structured their world throughout history, both architecturally and through garments like corsets, as well as through other institutions. I really wanted to play around with that in the lineup. I began with the Dorothea bodies, probably still my favorite thing I've ever made, and I used Photoshop to collage an image of them onto a human form. I played around with the way the corset sat on the body and the structure it created. I want to create full looks from here on out, so I played around with the bottom of the body and how some of the codes from the corset could be used on the legs and hips. The beauty of Photoshop is that you can save every iteration of a collage, so I was able to print out a contact sheet and edit down the ideas. I also brought in the gown I made as part of the Our Flag Means Death ensemble, and I will be referencing the shirt from that ensemble as well. I also referenced modern garments in the collaging process. I think it's important this historicism research be grounded in a modern context. For example, one of the looks in the lineup will reference the OFMD robe and cut and a modern suit jacket in detail and construction. So I'm just gonna pop back in here and talk about another toxicism from the fashion industry and beyond. People, artists, designers are terrified to share work in progress. There's this fear that if you share that you're working on X thing, that someone else will see it and make X thing first. I've actually experienced this, and I have to say it's not that bad. We can be inspired by each other and make the same sorts of things, and still each one can be valid. We've become accustomed to this industry where brands rely on novelty and gimmicks, but we all exist in the same world and experience the same inspiration. And if you have a design voice, a style, an aesthetic that is yours, you can make the same type of thing as someone else and make it completely differently. One of you can make a suit jacket gown and share it, and it can go viral before I make mine, and go for it. Mine will still be valid. Anywho, I made that design process sound like it took an hour, but it didn't. I mean, it took 5 years because I had to make all the pieces to reference, but also I took several months to fine comb the images and decide which ones I would actually make and what story I wanted to tell. And the process isn't done. I don't work at the NGO anymore. I teach fashion design and fashion sustainability, and I absolutely love it. And the one thing I hope I teach all of my students is that you don't just draw or collage an idea, then make that thing. You draw or collage an idea, and that is where the design journey starts. For example, I've been making the first look in the lineup for the last 4 months. It's incredibly laborious and probably the most time-consuming look in the collection. And to make it, I had to first make samples of all the fabrications, go back and forth about scale and proportion, make mock-up after mock-up, before finally making the actual pieces. It's almost done, by the way. But yeah, the preliminary lineup is done. I am prioritizing quality over quantity, so the videos will be done when they're done, and each one will be a full look. I will be showcasing the entire lineup somewhere and still trying to decide the best option, whether that's some sort of runway situation or a static exhibition. We'll see. There are a couple of other exciting things in the works for the collection, but I'm gonna keep those to myself for the moment because they involve a lot of other people. And whew, that's kind of it for right now. I'll be continuing to announce each video the Monday before its Thursday release, and the next video, the first look in the collection, will be along shortly. If you enjoyed this video, I always appreciate a thumbs up, and hit subscribe if you want to join the fashion resistance. Bye. I actually have to take this.